You're so bleak, Mike.
It's the holiday.
I know, I get bleak during the holiday too, but not that bleak.
Do you like haunts?
Yes.
Do you like immersive theater?
Yes.
Do you like escape rooms?
Yes.
What's the safe word?
My haunt life. Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all of that
Festive stuff.
Gross. But thankfully 2017 is just about over.
And can I just say, I want that thing to hang its head, slam the door behind it, do its walk of shame, never be seen again. Just go away, 2017.
Or as I would say, fuck you 2017. Get the fuck out of here. Never come back. Fuck off.
Okay, yeah. I will. I second the fuck 2017.
That's how we feel about you 2017.
It's been a really crappy year.
Yeah, and the thing is, it seems like it's been a lot of people. It's not just like an isolated thing. It's overall, there's a sense of that 2017 has just been horrible for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, numerous fronts. Yeah, personal, medical, family. So yeah, on many fronts.
So since it's Christmas, Santa delivers packages.
Yes.
I mean, I guess you could say mailmen are the Santas of everyday life.
Yeah.
But we got Box of Dread, and we actually have two to talk about because we got one during the holidays, like in between the last time we recorded, and then we just got one yesterday.
Yeah.
So I have to compliment Box of Dread because they are upping the ante on this, and the last few boxes that they've sent have been awesome. They've been going with themes, and they have, like, the actual box is colored. It has the Box of Dread logo. It's not just a plain cardboard box anymore. I know they hired a curator, so it's not just a one-man show anymore. So all of these changes are definitely having a positive effect on the entire experience, like on the unboxing experience and the stuff that we're getting inside. Like, especially, I mean, you haven't opened yesterday's yet, but wait till so Russell likes to have on-air excitement, quote unquote. And
because I am the king of excitement.
Anyways,
You're rolling your eyes again.
when you open that, you're going to hear, oh my God. And that's pretty exciting.
Okay.
And it's stuff that, I don't know, we'll get to it, but
I haven't
it's just,
said that in a long time.
it's just one of those things where, like, Box of Dread, keep doing what you're doing because it's been awesome so far. There's definitely an improvement based on past crates. So the last one we got before yesterday was a very fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been playing a certain game and celebrate certain day of the month sometimes.
Yeah.
This crate's theme was Friday the 13th. And inside was some fun stuff. There was a Jason Voorhees bottle opener, which you can hear. But listen to this. Like, that's metal, and that just hurt. But it's Jason, and he can open bottles, which, for my bottles of root beer and your bottles of whatever you drink, formula, I don't know.
Ginger beer now.
So not only that, but there was Friday the 13th ice cube tray. So that goes hand in hand with the bottle opener.
Mm-hmm.
And if your kitchen wasn't complete enough, there was also a Freddy versus Jason cookie cutter, which is pretty awesome. And then there was also a comic called Twilight Hotel by Michael Aaron and Daryl E. Smith and Raw X. And it looks like Christopher Walken's head right there.
Yes,
on
it
the
does.
platter.
On a platter.
I haven't read it yet, but I will. Also, we got a DVD called Mischief Night and The Lucky Ones Die First. And we got a print, and it's a Trapper Keeper. I don't know if whoever listens to this remembers Trapper Keepers, but it says Trapper Keeper on the bottom, and it's Jason on top because he's a trapper and he keeps you. So you can hear me unrolling it, and there's lots of blood, and he's got an axe in one hand and a machete in the other, and it's all bloody, and it's just what we like about Jason. So yeah, so this one was awesome.
Yeah, this was a very, very cool box.
So you want to go ahead and open the one from yesterday?
Okay, sure.
And he's opening this box with a pen, everybody.
Because it's the closest thing I have.
Why don't you use your wit?
It's not that sharp.
Ayo.
All right. This is hard to do in this position.
That's what she said.
Oh my god.
I see, I knew it. What are you oh my godding about?
This is so cool. It is a limited edition mini bust of Vincent Price, presented by Rue Morgue. Which, by the way, if you're a horror fan and you haven't discovered Rue Morgue magazine, it's a must. Wow, that's wonderful. And we seem to have an Edward Scissorhands blind box, and again, I love the fact that they're including DVDs with these. It's like that's because that's
What's a DVD?
For the younger listeners. No, it's like you and Mike and I both quite often do the whole thing of
You, Mike, and I?
you and Mike and I.
Who else is around here?
It's going to be one of those podcasts where I'm just not incoherent.
Great.
The fact that they include DVDs quite often of either festival favorites or lesser known films, and it's a great way of discovering stuff. This is a film called Radius, which I flip over in the back and I literally see the Fantasia Fest and the Fright Fest the Fantasy Film Fest, Fantastic Fest. Yeah, I might be watching this tonight. That's a high praise coming from all those festivals. So, and what else have we got buried in here, Mike? We have a comic book. And what is this? Oh, wow, this looks like an exclusive.
Yeah, turn it over.
A certificate of authenticity. That's how exclusive it is. It's a special Box of Dread first issue edition of Ash versus the Army of Darkness. As you said, they have really upped their game. It's like the Box of Dreads are really, really, they're much more extravagant. They're so much nicer. And we have a signed card wishing us a happy Halloween from the Rabbit in Red and Barry the Rabbit. This is I believe this is a downloadable comic book, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Just lots of exploration to be done here.
And the cool thing about Box of Dread is it's one of the only horror, if not the only horror box. Like, I think there's some smaller ones, but, Nerd Block had Horror Block, but Nerd Block went out of business. Loot Crate doesn't have a horror box, so, this is probably the biggest and best one right now. And if you know of any other horror boxes, let us know, because there's probably a bunch that we don't know about. And for more information on Box of Dread, you can go to boxofdread.com. On Facebook, Box of Dread. On Instagram and Twitter, also Box of Dread. And Russell, when you were off visiting family and Deliverance Land, I did.
I am not from Deliverance Land. I am Deliverance Land adjacent.
It's all the same. I went to a new escape room from Escape Room LA, which we have been to all of their rooms.
Yes.
There was the Detective, which was featured on Conan O'Brien, the Alchemist, the Theater, and the Cavern. So they had 4 rooms, and we've done them all.
Yeah, the Alchemist is actually one of my all-time favorite escape rooms. I love that thing.
And each one that we've done, I feel, got better and better. So it started off with the Detective and the Cavern, and then they opened up the Alchemist and the Theater,
which is another one of my favorites. I like the Theater a lot.
And when we did those, it was just like, whoa, it was just like more and more.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know if there's a traditional escape room anymore, but when I think of escape room, like traditional escape room, I think of, there's padlocks and number locks and stuff like that. And I think like Escape Room LA started getting away from those with all of their rooms,
right,
a little more and more. So it was kind of like seeing an evolution happening. And their new room, the Pyramid, it just keeps going. And I can't wait for you to do this room.
I'm so looking forward. I was actually going to try to do it this week, but unfortunately events got in the way. But yeah, I'm trying to form a team now, and I will hopefully be doing this right after the first of the year.
So the pyramid, I mean, first, when you think of pyramid, I think most people, I know I do, think of Egypt and mummies and stuff
Or
like that.
Aztec, yeah.
No, not or. It's what you're first thinking.
Okay, all right.
Damn it, Russell, you ruined everything. Anyways, the pyramid is based on the Mayan and Aztec type of pyramids.
Ah, okay.
So thanks. And so if you listen to this and you ever saw Legends of the Hidden Temple, or a fan of any sort of like Raiders of the Lost Ark type of stuff, like you will love this room. There are haunt moments in it. There are puzzles that are really will make you want to punch walls because it's like how do we figure this out, and ultimately you do figure it out, and it's so satisfying. Like, this is one of the most satisfying games that I've played because the puzzles at first seemed so hard, and then finally something clicked and it's like, oh, this goes to this and this goes to this, okay, I know how to figure this out now. And it's just fun. And I will say that we did escape. We had the fastest time at the moment. It might have gotten beaten by then. This was maybe a week or two into it. But yeah, like, again, no number locks, a lot of electronic type unlocks. So you have to put things in a certain order and something magically happens. And I love stuff like that.
Right.
Like, I love it.
Well, I have a question for you. I went on Facebook and watched the sort of little trailer ad that they have for this. The production design in that looks so cool.
Oh, I was going to get to that.
And it looks massive.
Yeah. It first, like, the production, like, this is probably their most beautiful room. I mean,
Really?
the cavern is beautiful, and
The
the alchemist is beautiful.
Oh.
This is another level.
Oh, man.
Yeah, like, that's why I can't wait. And I believe the capacity in this room is 8 people. We had 8 people when we did it. At times, you will feel very crowded and feel like, okay, 8 is too many. But then there's other parts where it's like, okay, we need 8.
Oh, okay.
So if you do this room, make sure that, like, if you do have 8 people and you get cramped, realize that it's only temporary. And you will need every brain in every head that is with you to figure out some of these puzzles.
I don't want spoilers, but are you saying cramped enough to be claustrophobic if that's an issue for some people?
There are times that, depending on what you do, could be an issue.
Really?
I told you there's haunt moments, man.
Oh, excellent. I am so looking forward to this. I want to do this immediately.
Yeah, it's such a good room, and Escape Room LA does not disappoint. And also, last time we were there, we went up through like an elevator and everything, right? Yeah, wait till you see the new lobby.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was another thing. It was like, well, when did this happen?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I definitely, like I said, I'm trying to form a team because most of my friends who do escape rooms have already done this because I was out of town when everyone was doing it. So I'm looking forward to this a lot.
Yeah, you'll love it. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. And for more information on Escape Room LA, the Pyramid, and their other 4 rooms, which you should definitely do, go to escaperoomla.com, on Facebook, Escape Room LA, on Instagram, Escape Room DTLA, and on Twitter, escape_room_LA. And you did something that we did but didn't talk about because it was a beta test and we didn't think we really should.
Yeah, we didn't think, at the time we talked about it, and we didn't think it was fair because we sort of did a beta test of something, and then immediately following that beta test, there was a group conversation where the creator of the event said that there were going to be some major changes. So in that situation, we usually don't talk about something, or we indicate that, hey, like, things probably have changed. And I'm talking about Night Shift, which was part of Horror Escapes LA. It was in downtown Los Angeles and is apparently no longer running. I think it was limited for the fall season. And I believe I went to the second last time slot or third to last time slot, and
Of the run or of
of
the
the
night?
run, I
Okay.
believe. So, well, and the way this happened, Mike, is a friend of ours had a ticket and literally called me and said, "I've actually double booked myself. Do you want to take this ticket and try night shift again?" And I was like, "Sure," because they said they were going to do changes. And what was your impression? Let's do a comparison, I guess. What was your impression when we first did it?
See, and this is why we didn't talk about it, because
Yeah.
I don't think it's really fair, because I really didn't enjoy it. And based on the feedback we gave them, it wouldn't have been fair for me to say I didn't enjoy it when what I was saying was possibly going to lead into changes.
Yes.
So,
And I felt the same way. I didn't particularly enjoy the beta test. I thought there was two sequences in particular that were complete misfires, and particularly the climactic sequence was really really poorly done when we did it as a beta test.
yeah.
I will say this to you, Mike. They have improved it.
Cool.
It's like they did improve it. They actually, some of the changes that from that group discussion from our beta test, I know they did other beta tests that same night. I know changes were made based on that. A Night Shift was sort of a horror-esque experience, and right before you go into Night Shift, the Horror Escapes LA, whoever the host was, they make a sort of intro speech. And one of the things that they state right at the beginning that we've taken elements of immersive theater, we've taken elements of haunts, we've taken elements of escape rooms, and we mashed them all together to create this unique experience. Well, Mike, in the beta test and when I went back, I think that is the problem right there. It's the good and the bad of this event that they tried. Is it wasn't enough of any one of those elements to know what it wanted to be,
Right.
which we talked about actually in the group conversation about the beta test. When I went back, I will say this, they simplified it, it was definitely better than our first time through, but it still had its rough moments. I went with a mutual friend of ours, Justin, who was in town that weekend, and one of the comments that Justin made after we were done was that in the first 10 minutes, he said, I knew that we were literally being given busy work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I knew that everything we were doing was not going to have any effect on the event, on the story, on the plot. Like literally, they were just padding the situation for the running time. And he said, I felt that 10 minutes in. And the opening of this was you were supposedly showing up as a night shift and temporary night shift employee at a warehouse. The storyline is not strong. The storyline didn't make a whole lot of sense because somehow in the middle of the warehouse, there's also a house where a young lady lives that you encounter. And the weird thing for me, Mike, is when we went in the beta test, there was this whole kind of subplot about spider's eggs.
Mm-hmm.
They dropped the plot, but they kept the spider's eggs.
Okay.
So somebody in the first room makes reference to a box of eggs and it never pays off. And then suddenly later you're in a room with a huge spider web and a huge egg sac. And and that's it. It doesn't make any sense. So the story was a bit weak. So here's the thing. Horrorscapes LA does other escape rooms. And here's my opinion, Mike. I need to do something else by this company. Because I think this was an experiment. They stated it was an experiment of them trying to mash up various genres, and it didn't work very well for me, even the second time around. And I will say that the simplification worked overall. They took out some of the gross bits. There was a sequence where I had to dig in a bucket of vomit or fake vomit for a key at one point. Literally, that became a couple inches of bloody water the second time I went through.
Huh.
So that was less gross. The instructions we were given, I will say part of our issue with the beta test was the first room, there was someone yelling at you all the time. To that point, I just tuned the guy out, and then at some point somebody realized that he was actually yelling clues at us, but we were so annoyed by the yelling that we tuned him out. That character improved immensely. It was a different actor, and it was much more of an aggressive supervisor type. And I found the character a bit annoying, but I will say also very humorous. And I will say this was on the plus side of the whole immersive theater aspect of what they were doing. It was kind of funny to be in the, like, we couldn't do anything right. And he kept criticizing us and mocking us and making fun of us, which was slightly annoying, but also he really did have a really good sense of humor. So that was kind of cool. However, one of the tasks that he gave us, we had to unlock. He gave somebody a task and said, search for 8 items, I think was the number. And then several tasks later, we unlocked something, and some of the items that that person had been sent to search for were locked in what we unlocked. So that person had been working on a task that there was no way he could complete. So that becomes an iffy escape room motive. Like, don't tell me to solve a puzzle and then not give me the tools to solve the puzzle. It became very weird. And so what happened is the actor ended up having to lead us very heavily all the way. We never felt like we were in control or had our own, as some people use the word, agency in the situation, because it was so led and so controlled. My favorite part when we did the beta test, and again going back, was you encounter a young woman that is either trapped here, being held against her will, you're not sure based on the story, and she kind of helps you in a couple of areas. That was still my favorite part. That was the creepiest part. We did unfortunately have a situation where a door got stuck, and we unlocked the door. I tried the door. We couldn't get through the door. And we heard the actress on the other side going like, so have you done everything? And then the actress was, so have you unlocked the lock? Did you take the padlock off the door?
Oh my God.
And we were literally, yeah, yes we have. We can't open the door. And then you heard the actress trying to go open the door on her side, and she couldn't get it open either. So, and of course the whole thing, and they're very clear at the beginning, don't force anything. So we didn't want to force the door. So eventually the actress forced the door open, which caused a little awkward, humorous moment. But I really enjoyed the actress. I thought she was very good. The final sequence, which was a huge problem when we beta tested, they definitely improved that. The problem that we had is it was played for laughs in what was supposedly a horror scenario. And when I went back, our group, they played it straight. They played it as straight horror, and it worked so much better. And we had, there's a visual at the end, if you remember, Mike, where they tell you that you're supposed to like watch something happen through a pane of glass. And a lot of people missed it at the beta test because it wasn't well blocked or directed. And they did fix that problem too.
Cool. Where
like one character gets led behind the pane of glass, and they actually say, a little obviously, watch the pane of glass. It was a little on the nose, but now I do have one really serious issue, and this is another reason why I have to give Horror Escapes LA another try, is to see if I encounter anything like this. The ticket that was given to me by a friend, that I purchased from a friend, was considered a full contact experience, which was a higher price, apparently, for the run of this show. And we knew that they were going to do the 2 tiers, during the beta test. Mike, nobody touched me the entire experience.
I won't make it the obvious joke, but yeah, if you're advertising that and charging a higher price.
Yes.
Because we've heard that from a couple things this year.
Yes, absolutely.
And it really didn't seem like there was a payoff.
There was no payoff to paying a higher price for this event, and that is a serious problem if you're advertising something and not delivering and charging your patron for it. So the only contact I had was in the first room. The supervisor character sometimes touched us on, like would put a hand on the shoulder, poke us in the chest, like move us physically a little bit. And then near the end, we had to get from one sequence to another, a blindfold was put on us, and they did the classic put your hand on the shoulder of the person in front of you, and she sort of led us and then took us by the arms and moved us into a very specific position, and then we removed our blindfold. That's not a full contact experience. That's just me being placed somewhere.
Right.
And Justin and I actually spoke after the event because he brought up the question like, okay, if that was a full contact experience, how do they guide people without touching them? Because I would assume, even if it's not a full contact ticket, they would have to do the same thing. They would have to blindfold you and move you from room to room.
Right.
So I have no idea, after going through this event, what about it was supposed to be full contact. Like I said, there's also there's a couple of themes which are horror oriented. They're called Horror Escapes LA. I think you and I, Mike, both need to go back and experience something else from this company.
Yeah, it makes me really want to after hearing this.
I know, but it becomes this weird thing. Like, I see potential. I think this was a misfire, but I see potential. So I want to see what they do with a normal escape room, which is what they're advertising. I think the mistake here was them trying to mash up immersive theater, escape room, and haunt elements, so they didn't know what they had and they didn't know what they wanted to do. You know, I think this was just a misfire. I want to give this company another chance.
That's why you're you.
I'm always the optimist. So if you want to learn more about Horror Escapes LA and check out, like I said, Night Shift is no longer running, but if you want to check out their escape room themes, they do look like they have some fun escape rooms. HorrorEscapesLA.com, on Facebook, Horror Escapes LA, on Instagram, Horror Escapes LA, and they also have a YouTube channel if you look up Horror Escapes LA.
There's a lot of escape rooms on this podcast because you also went to New York and did one.
I did. And I met some friends in New York. And we have a mutual friend, John, who lives in Philadelphia, who actually came up and we did escape rooms. And we went to a company called Komnata Quest Escape Rooms. And Mike, the reason I was drawn to this is plunking around on the internet. I had read a review of one of this company's escape rooms. And it was one of those reviews where I went, wait a minute, they do what? And I was really excited to try this. And what happened was I booked that escape room, and John came up and met me, and we had some dinner. We did the escape room, and right after us, nobody else had booked another one of the escape rooms. And so we were like, woohoo, let's do it. Because they were promising scary experiences. They were promising, they have a wide variety. Komnata Quest is apparently a company with escape rooms in multiple cities. They have actually said that they are planning at some point of coming to Los Angeles. So I hope they do. The escape room that intrigued me was called Boxed Up, and it is tied slightly to the Sherlock Holmes story. The idea is that Moriarty, if you know your Sherlock Holmes mythologies, kidnaps you and a friend, but gives you the chance to figure out a way to escape. And what they do, Mike, and I'm not going to give too much away, because if you do your research on this escape room, you'll find out before you go in that this is what you do. We had a lovely host named Bridget at Komnata Quest, and I was talking to her. I arrived early, and I was talking to her a bit, and we were talking about escape rooms in LA and differences, and I said that, you know, one of the common things in escape rooms in LA is people don't know how they should be zoned. Cities don't know how to classify them. Are they events? Are they theater? Are they arcades? Are they, you know, so, you know, and apparently, you know, that leads to certain rules. I feel in LA sometimes that sometimes some of the escape rooms I think are a little conservative in how they handle patrons. One that isn't, which is one of our favorite escape rooms from this past year, is Zoe in Los Angeles, which we love dearly. So I was talking about some of this, and the Komnata Quest person, Bridget, looked at me and she went, oh, we have no problem with things like that here in New York. And I think you'll understand in a few minutes. And I was like, what does she mean? And I will say this, John and I did 2 escape rooms. I'm not going to tell you how, when it was done, but both of us found ourselves hooded, restrained, in claustrophobic situations, being moved around in rather interesting ways, all to set the mood, to get you disoriented, and I absolutely loved it.
That's awesome.
just the fact that they were unafraid of like, no, you want a really immersive kind of like freaky, scary experience. We'll try to provide one. I really liked that about them. Now, Boxed Up, the plot is, as I said, you and a friend have been kidnapped by Moriarty. So what happens is you find yourself handcuffed, being led through the dark, and when the game starts, and I won't reveal exactly how that happens, but when the game starts, you realize that you have been locked inside a very large coffin. And the goal of the game is to figure out how to get out of the coffin. Except here's the thing, your partner has also been locked in their coffin. So if each of you is locked in a box, how do you work together? How do you communicate? What technology do you have at your disposal? And your instructions before going in is look at everything, investigate everything, except you're in the dark. You have no source of light until you figure out how to create a source of light. Is that not a cool beginning or what?
That's pretty rad.
So, John and I ended up handcuffed inside coffins, and it took 45 minutes. We were very lucky. We escaped with 2 minutes to spare. And I will say this, Komnata Quest in Boxed Up manages to fit in a couple of very specific jump scares while you're in that situation. The way that you can communicate is very clever. I will say that we found ourselves missing a couple clues along the way, and then when you figure it out, it seems so obvious, but because you're in the dark much of the time, and then we had to figure out a way of how to count. If one person has light, the other person may not at times. So how do you share light if you're not in the adjacent? It's really bizarre and interesting being in that situation. I loved this escape room. I think John and I had so much fun doing this. I would recommend to anyone. This was actually their Brooklyn location that we went to.
You're such a hipster.
I think anyone who really likes dark and creepy escape rooms would really enjoy this experience. However, if you're claustrophobic, this may be a problem for you. And by coffin, I don't mean extremely tight. I could probably laying down at the beginning of the game, if I reached up, I would probably say the lid was a couple feet above me. So there was a little bit of space, and it's space where you can turn around in the coffin. So you can actually, switch your feet and head, can switch places. So you can move around in there a little bit. But if you're heavily claustrophobic, this would be a really difficult experience, I think. But we enjoyed it. We escaped. And I will say this, it has one of the goofiest clues, and it's present from the beginning because you sense it. And during the entire escape room, for the entire 45 minutes, John and I were cracking jokes about it. And we were like, why is this here? Each of us had the same clue inside our coffin. And we kept we kept talking back and forth, like, do you have this? Yes, I have this. Why do we have this? Doesn't make any sense. And then it's the last thing you use. It's the first thing you're aware of, and it's the last thing you use. And I hope I'm not giving too much away by even saying that, but it was such a goofy clue when we realized how it played into the solution. And also, I'm also going to say that they find a clever way of using technology also in this, because you do rely on technology at one point. So definitely recommend that. And then we left that, decided that if they had an opening, we would love to try another one of their rooms because we had such a good time. So they have something called the City of Ashes, which is actually inspired by the Silent Hill game and movie mythology. So we went in. That was actually an hour long. And I will say another really nice production design on this. There was some very creepy elements. The way you get into the room was a really nice mood setter. Again, unsettling. They put us in darkness for a little while, got us into position, and then the game started. And this one had a fascinating number of reveals. Like, oh, wait, this is bigger. Oh, wait, there's more. oh, wait, we can go around that corner. Oh, wait, this unlocked. It just kept adding up and getting bigger and grander, and I really, really enjoyed that about this room. We did have a couple of clue problems. I missed a really obvious clue because you know how you're not supposed to force anything in an escape room?
Yeah.
I touched something, and I thought a previous patron had broken it because it was like everything was solid. You know, everything that I was looking around, I was feeling the walls, I was like looking for something, and we knew that something had to open or give or do something. And I touched something and I thought it was broken. And so I didn't go back and touch it. Actually, that was the solution. And when we got totally stumped, we asked for a clue and they said, go back and re-examine that area. And as soon as she said that as the clue, I went, oh my gosh, that wasn't broken. That was actually the solution. And so there were a couple of things like that tripped us up. I will say there was some really clever props in this one where you got to use and props to John. He made a connection that, you know me, Mike, I sometimes don't make connections in escape rooms. So John made a connection that was like, as soon as he did it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? And it unlocked a whole like visual scare. It unlocked a visual clue. Really nice production design, playing off the lost children of the town, playing off the mythology of there's fire. At one point you encounter like a furnace room area. So there's lots of things that unlock. I will say this, even though there are clever use of props, really good horror vibe, there's some good jump scares even. I thought the clues and a couple of the puzzles were a bit odd in this one, and we totally got stumped, even though we solved everything in one of the rooms, and we ended up with 2 props. And we knew that we needed to use those 2 props together. We could not figure out what to do. And then when we finally figured it out, both of us felt that it was sort of a logic jump. Where and it was the way something was written through us very badly. And it was like, okay, well that's it was a kind of a hiccup in a really fun room. And also a couple of the clues we felt did the same thing, even though we did get through it. And that one we escaped with only 60 seconds left. So the ending of that was a little unclear, because it ends with you're supposed to, like, there's like almost a dramatic reading at the end of it, which I thought was really interesting and very cool, except we were still in problem solving mode. So as it was going on, we were trying to figure out what the next step was, and actually that was the ending. But again, good production design. Komnata Quest escape rooms. We went to the Brooklyn location. We did Boxed Up and the City of Ashes. Found both of them highly entertaining, really fun. And the small quibbles we had about clues and the way they were given or things like that, completely overcome by the fun factor. And if you go to New York next year, I want you to go to Brooklyn and do Boxed Up. Trust me.
We'll see.
Trust me.
If I have time.
You don't trust me, do you?
No, it's not that. But I mean, I have to fit in Sleep No More, Then She Fell, and every other like New York thing that I feel like I'm the only person in California that hasn't seen yet. So those come first.
So, well, yeah, Then She Fell, definitely. If you'd like more information on Komnata Quest escape rooms, we did the Brooklyn location. You can go to komnataquest.com. You can go to Facebook, look up Komnata NYC, for there is a Manhattan location and a Brooklyn location. And on Instagram, look up komnataquest.nyc, and you'll find information and pictures. So one thing that I managed to do this year, which unfortunately, Mike, I know you wanted to, and it didn't fit into your schedule.
Yeah, I'm so bummed.
Actually, we grouped all the escape rooms together. Right after I did that night shift the second time, we literally ran across town because we only had 45 minutes to make it to Blood Alley Christmas at Zombie Joe's Underground Theater.
It's like a reverse escape room.
So, again, Blood Alley Christmas, I think, is becoming a very welcome Christmas tradition for horror and haunt fans and theater fans here in LA. They've done it a couple years now.
Which really tells you something about the people in LA.
This was truly, truly for me, the funniest Blood Alley Christmas.
Interesting.
The humor was off the charts. The crowd absolutely loved it, had a wonderful time. Since it's no longer running, I can say that the funniest bits for me included elves wrapping presents and finding them incredibly sexually aroused by the process. Joseph wrestling with the concept of immaculate conception is one of the funniest bits I have ever seen at Zombie Joe's. Hands down, that moment where you realize what he's like, the internal struggle of Joseph of like, how do I come to terms with what my child is? It was amazing. It ended with a conductor making use of a certain male body part to create holiday music.
Oh, finger?
No. No, not a finger. And that literally brought down the house. That was the finale. That was absolutely... I am rarely that shocked at Zombie Joe's, and you could tell the whole audience, I think, was just flabbergasted that we were actually witnessing what we were witnessing. And that's compliments to a very brave cast and a wonderful, wonderful sense of humor. And also, Blood Alley Christmas, you know that there's a dark side. And on the darker side, they have a rendition of Silent Night that was incredibly haunting and beautiful and amazingly well performed. And I thought that was just... let's just say someone in the end remained silent forevermore. It was amazing. And something from our favorite piece from last year, Mike, which involved a woman who had been victimized and a flower. They brought that piece back.
Oh, nice. For Christmas?
Yes, they did.
Was she wearing like Christmas lights or
No.
a Santa hat or anything?
No, she was not wearing anything.
No, I know that, but like, what made it Christmassy?
So, nothing in particular other than the flower was red.
Was it a poinsettia?
No, because they're poisonous, dude.
Maybe that's how she died.
Oh, okay. All right.
You gotta think about the whole story, Russell.
All right, I'm sorry. I missed that. Yeah, it was that piece came back. And actually, there was also a piece involving a very sexual interpretation of what to do under the mistletoe, which I believe was a repeat, which also I liked immensely. And Mike, I you know I like Christmas music.
Okay.
I love Christmas music, actually. And, it's like my favorite Christmas recording of all time is probably a song called Silent Night, Christmas Blue by the Tractors. If you like Christmas music, check that out. Actually, the Tractors' first Christmas album is pretty damn amazing. Wow, I'm sorry, I digress. But my favorite Christmas song of all time is probably Little Drummer Boy. And they did the absolute most sexualized version of Little Drummer Boy you could possibly imagine.
What were they using as drumsticks?
They weren't using anything as drumsticks.
Oh.
But
well, there's an idea for next year, Zombie Joe.
Yes, that was a very haunting, very disturbing version of Little Drummer Boy. But here's the thing about Bloody Alley.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I was still thinking about Little Drummer Boy.
Wow. Oh, way to make things awkward.
I really do feel that this is something about Christmas and the commercialization, as you know, and all the Christmas music that inundates you. This is a really welcome poke at Christmas. This is just like let's not take all of this so seriously. And I think that's what I needed when I saw it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said at the beginning of this, I think this is a welcome, really welcome tradition that's forming.
And you saw that with Justin too, right?
So yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think it blew his mind.
I bet. A first Zombie Joe show being a Blood Alley incarnation, yeah that's going to blow someone's mind.
Yeah. He was, he actually, I know, got a chance to meet a couple of the cast members afterwards, and we talked to Zombie Joe afterwards, and yeah, I was so happy to be there with Justin because literally he didn't know what hit him, I think, so in a good way, in an absolute good way. So if you would like to keep up with Zombie Joes, look up zombiejoes.com, and on Facebook look up ZJU Theater, on Instagram Zombie Joes, and on Twitter Zombie Joes.
And it's time.
It's time
It's time
for
the Lust Experience.
Lust. Oh, yeah.
Now, the Lust Experience had their mid-season event called Anointment. And this was an event that you could purchase tickets to and go. You didn't need to know any of the ARG stuff or anything. You could go in knowing everything or knowing nothing. You did this before me, and it was funny because I was like, I don't want to talk to you. Don't text me. Don't tell me anything. I stayed away from the internet. Like,
Yep.
I mean, I already deleted Facebook because OSDM data collects, and same thing with like Instagram and stuff. So those were safe, but I didn't even want to know if you liked it, if you didn't like it, like anything like that. So that's how I go into things now, because you have to, because spoilers are everywhere. Like, picture that Buzz Lightyear meme, like spoilers everywhere. But anyways, now we both have done it. This was a one-time event, so we can talk about it. And what did you think?
Well, let's start with a little setup, because yes, they stated very clearly, like, you can come in knowing everything or knowing nothing. At the beginning of November, they sort of did a plot twist where a video was released with several of the characters who we thought might be opposing forces came together and seemed to reveal that they were actually somehow working together. And in the parking lot before this event, you sort of got a recap of some of the characters. They did sort of an information dump with the character of Morgan, giving...
He's not a character. Are we doing the same thing, like about Addison? She's not a character. Morgan is not a character.
Okay, Morgan. And Morgan's a friend. So, wow, I don't even know how to talk about this anymore. So going into this, I had the expectation that somehow that was going to be a factor or addressed. And I think that's my biggest confusion walking away from it, which we'll get to in a little while, probably.
Right. Yeah, and so before we go into this, I like, because I've heard so many different things. I heard what happened at the finale, or whatever it was. Everything that I'm going to talk about was about my show, like specific things that I saw or experienced, not about things I read, not about other people's experience, but just mine. Because I think that's very important based on my show. Right.
And I will do the same. And if we need to make reference to, because, yeah, apparently on the finale, which happened the night after you went, apparently there was all of this additional information which was given to only one show.
Right. That you could only get into if you were invited or bought a second ticket to.
Right. Which I wasn't confident enough to buy a second ticket before going in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So anyway, how do you begin? You begin.
It pains me to say this, but I didn't enjoy it at all. And like, and another thing too is, like, I'm not comparing this to Ascension, like, because that would be unfair. But it's, I was thinking, like, every day after it, like, what didn't I like? And I think the biggest thing, like, there was a couple things that happened inside that really just took me out of the show, and I'll get to that. But everything that we've learned over like the last like almost year, like 9-10 months, all the characters, Russell, all the people that we've known and learned about and have had any sort of emotional investment, like, in their story, in their progress, didn't pay off, at least for me. Like Noah's like seminars and wanting us to do better for me, for my show, he was a cameo at the end. You know,
Yeah, and the same for my show as well. And didn't seem to be consistent with a whole bunch of other stuff he said in the past.
right? And you know, and this is why I'm saying this is only about my show, because I read other shows where there was other people. So in my show, there was no Sarah Sinclair, there was no Michelle, there was no Joyce. There was no Horace that I saw. I barely saw Stephanie. I barely saw Sabrina. I saw Mason, like he was hanging around me a bunch, but like that's it. Like, and the thing is with like Stephanie and Sabrina, they were also just kind of like cameos. Like it felt like a spin-off, like using people that we've known, and everything like the culmination up to this event, everything that we saw, like the video that you were just talking about, you know, like everything that happened with the OSDM and the data collecting and all of that, there was nothing, you know. And like I had faith that they know what they're doing and where this is going to end up, because I remember last year leading up to Ascension, we're like, what the hell, how does any of this make sense? And it ended up making sense. But the big difference is there wasn't a mid-season event intention that we had to pay $100 to see, that to have it make no sense. So that's my big thing, is it was a sex party that had a ceremony at the end of it. You know, there was nothing else like about what we've learned over the last almost year.
And a fairly, for the most part, uninteresting sex party.
That you weren't doing it right then. Just kidding.
The thing that surprised me, and that's why I actually brought up the video, Mike, is because in my show, Sarah like walked up at the very end and apparently hugged Noah. Like that was it. And Joyce wasn't around. I didn't see Horace if he was there at my show. And so this whole thing of all these characters coming together and possibly
characters,
all these people coming together and possibly working together, I thought that's what this was going to be. Mm-hmm. And it didn't advance the story very much, if at all.
Right.
For me, nothing makes sense other than, again, we have read that info was given to the final group that does affect the story. But for the ticket price I paid, the story didn't advance very much.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I might have had a more positive experience than you, but I agree with everything that you just said.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, going back to like, you know, your whole thing, like there was no emotional investment. Like you had said, these, like we're hanging out with like a bunch of shitty people for 2 hours.
Oh, I really disliked almost everyone that I encountered the entire night.
Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to become invested. Like there was one investment I had, and that was with the singer, you know, like who, you know, for obvious reasons reminds me of like Addison Jr. or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely she does.
Blonde hair, red dress, is there against her will. Like, you know, like, and her singing voice was incredible.
Oh yeah.
But like she was the first person I really spoke to after the initial like get in there and, you know, hear the spiel from the woman. And her story, it was just like breaking my heart. And then she brought me back to the stage and she sat next to me and sang me a song, like right there. Like
wow.
I was invested. Like I was like, oh my God, let me take you out of here. Let's go. Like I was ready, you know, like everything I used to feel about like when I was in Ascension, like let's rescue this person. Like, let's get him out of here. Like I did. I was like, let's go. No one's looking. Like I was trying to like help her get out, you know? And then once that was over, the rest of the night was just downhill for me.
Well, let's
you know, and sorry, like let me back up again.
Go ahead.
So I said I was telling my story from the show I went to, and the reason I'm doing that is because I've talked to other people who said they had Sabrina as their host, they had Mason as their host, like each of them like did introductions at the beginning. I didn't have that, and I think if I did, it might have been a little bit better because there was more of a connection with those people instead of a random person that I've never met before whose name I don't even know. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out.
No, I think that's a valid point. I did have Sabrina as the host. Let's talk about story. You show up at a parking lot. Morgan gives you a recap of who Noah Sinclair is, who Sabrina is.
Which, by the way, that was really well done.
Oh, yes.
Like
Absolutely.
Especially if you go in not knowing anything, like that recap was great.
Right. And it added a certain air of mystery to Morgan, who is already mysterious. So,
Well,
it's the accent. He just seems mysterious.
okay.
So sometimes I have to tell Morgan to repeat stuff because I can't understand the accent sometimes if he talks fast. Seriously. Although I will say this, God damn, that cigarette annoyed me because it kept blowing smoke toward me. So anyway, and Morgan informs us when we arrive at the parking lot that we had bought tickets to an OSDM event. That the OSDM had promised that they were going to open their doors and prove how wonderful the organization was, and they're a philanthropic organization or whatever, because all of these horrible rumors about the OSDM are not true, and that they were going to host an event which proved it. And Morgan tells us in the parking lot, by literally collecting tickets and destroying those tickets, you're not going to that event. I've found a way to get you into a real OSDM event.
Right. It's like, why are you making that decision for us? Maybe we want to go to the other event.
Yes. And also, okay, if you want to digress there, the way that he said that this happened is a van is going to show up and take you to the event. Now, it's not the original driver. The original driver is in the trunk of my car, and if you notice the mark on my face, he put up a fight. So I was like, so to prove how horrible this organization is, you have either kidnapped or potentially murdered someone and stuffed the body in your trunk to prove to us that those guys are the bad guys?
That's BOS for you.
We're
going to force you to realize how good we are.
I was scratching my head in the parking lot. Before this whole thing began, I was already scratching my head going like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I'm going to go with it. So we supposedly were going to the real OSDM event. And here's the thing. We were talking earlier about how most of the people we encountered that night were ugly, nasty people, except for some helpless gals here and there. Well, if this was supposed to prove to us how nasty they were, you're using really questionable tactics. And if we were supposed to have an evening with nasty people to prove how nasty this organization is, I just want to walk away. And that's how I felt at the end of it, was I'm confused and I don't know why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
So we get in the van. And by the way, we should also point out that we were all made to wear masquerade masks.
Yes.
To supposedly hide our identity. So we go there, we're frisked. We had been told not to bring cell phones. Morgan told us to bring our cell phones. This was also something that was really confusing in my show, was the whole cell phone thread line didn't work at all.
Oh, I'll go into a story about that. That's what took me out of the show. And that happened, what, like a half hour, 45 minutes in?
Oh, probably less than that. And here's why I think I know the timeline, because of something else that happened. Actually, I can't tell you. It was half an hour in.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that. Because they were running half an hour late for my group. So he said, bring your cell phone, even though they told us not to. So we were frisked at the door, and then one by one we were let in. And did you encounter the couple when you first walked in?
Yes.
Okay. I walked in, and there was a small, like 3 or 4 steps that you had to walk up to get into the building once inside. After the frisking, we were made to stand single file. We were given hand signals and gestures that was supposedly a code that to make sure that you were one of the insiders. And each one of us was given one of those gestures during the whole frisking process and being made to wait outside. So when I got in and I walked to the top of the stairs, there was a couple making out heavily. And they turned as soon as I got to the top of the stairs. She grabbed me and immediately was like, I want you to fuck me. I want you to fuck me, and I want you to fuck him. I want you to fuck both of us. I want you to fuck now. I want you fucking us now. Like, immediately. And she was aggressive. He had a really bad case of the giggles for part of this. He was just giggling. And then I saw him pull out a prescription.
You saw him pull out?
No. Really? Really?
Come on.
I saw him pull out a prescription med container, and he popped it open and shoved a pill in my mouth. And she looked at me and said, "Swallow it." And I kind of gesture because I'm looking around and there's a bar nearby. I see the bar, I see tables, and there's a lounge singer. And I don't mean that as an insulting way. There seems to be like a lounge with some couches and stuff over at the other end of the room. And I literally kind of motioned for something to drink because the pill was rather large. And she just looked at me and like, swallow it like a big boy.
Oh, wow.
And I was, okay. And this was one of those trust issues. I was like, okay, I'm going to trust this. I'm going to go ahead and I swallowed it. And
You woke up 3 hours later without pants.
well, she came over and she had a scarf. And she wrapped the scarf around the neck and she tightened it and began choking me out. And as she's choking me, she's walking me backwards toward the lounge area. And she kind of threw me toward the lounge, like, you need to go take a seat. And that's how I wound up in the lounge area.
So, Mr. Safety Guy, with that, both of those things happening, were you told a safe word?
No, I was not given a safe word.
And based on those things, do you think somebody might have wanted to use a safe word?
In that point, I think some people would. Nothing was that I couldn't handle. And the weird thing is,
because you're a big boy.
Because I'm a big boy. You know that I have actually refused to ingest something inside a haunt.
Mm-hmm. I have too.
Because I didn't trust the haunt. And here's the thing, is like, I sort of had built up a level of trust with the lust experience at this point. I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm not happy about it, but I'm going to do this. It was a choice. I could have literally not swallowed the pill. I could have done several things to get myself out of the situation. And I chose not to. But you're right. Some people, I don't know if anybody refused. I don't know if if there was a issue with any patrons. I haven't heard of any. The choking thing would have freaked some people out, because she was aggressive with me. And I have no problem with that. Actually, it was very disorienting. It was intimidating as hell. And I say that in a positive way. Mm-hmm. Because it really, really unnerved me as I went to sit down and listen to the singer for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Right. What was your encounter?
Almost the same thing. I walked in and they were there, and the woman came up to me. She's like, "Do you want to fuck?" And I was like, "No." And so she's like, "What?" Like, I guess, I don't know, maybe caught her off guard, but she's like, "Oh, we gotta fuck," and like, he's gonna watch, and then, yeah, he was laughing as well. And then I wasn't given a pill, which is good because that wouldn't have happened. And they brought me over to the seating area.
So after we sat down, a young man came and asked us if we had our cell phone and made us turn it off, which again was like, oh, I thought nobody was going to have cell phones at this event. So that was a weird little hiccup. And then Sabrina, dressed sort of, well, it was almost business casual, jacket, business tight skirt, but only like a black bra underneath. And she came over and she became our host for my show.
And with my show, it was the woman, I believe it was the woman who dipped your hands in the wax in Ascension. And I remember her from going through the second time when they took us behind the scenes.
Okay. So Sabrina was the person who, she welcomed us, and she sort of, I also want to say one thing about Sabrina. Her makeup was much harsher in appearance, like darker colors than I've ever seen her wear before, and her makeup job made her look harsher than I've ever seen her before, which I thought was an interesting choice. She explained the rules, one of the rules being whenever she rung a bell, we would all gather around her. And she said at times, you'll be roaming, you'll be enjoying the evening, welcome to this, soiree, whatever. And she pulled someone from our group, which, in my show, it was actually someone we know, Rizzo. And challenged him to remove a piece of clothing and make it interesting for her. He was very daring, and he immediately, pulled the jacket and shirt off. And she looked at the rest of us, and she challenged each of us. Said, "I want everyone to remove a piece of clothing, keep it interesting." And at that point, I had my phone in my pocket, and I wasn't sure what the attitude toward the phone was. So I was fumbling with my phone, trying to get out of my jacket pocket into my pants pocket, and Sabrina looked directly at me. Keep in mind that we did have masks on, but she looked directly at me and said, "And what is taking you so long, sir?" Because I was like fumbling, and eventually I got the jacket off, and I started to untie the tie, and she had said, make it more interesting than a tie to a couple of people. Also during that time, there was a really, really beautiful African-American woman present in the room. She had a sort of a gold choker and ordained with very beautiful jewelry around her neck. Was she appear in your show?
Bald?
Yes.
Yeah.
She came over and sat next to me while all of this was sort of unfolding, and the singer was singing, and before we really got into it. And it was very interesting that she began caressing my leg and running her hand up my inner thigh. And because we weren't supposed to touch, I chose to mimic her on my other leg. So I literally, like, my hand movements, I was caressing myself the way she was caressing me.
Okay. Oh my God.
And she realized what I was doing, and she looked at me and she smiled. And, this was sort of after we were enjoying the song and we'd been given the instructions. And so she reached over and she took my hand and she held my hand and she smiled at me and she sort of leaned in. And that was right about the time when Sabrina rang the bell the first time. And we were instructed to go over to the bar and grab a drink and mingle for a little while and get comfortable. So that is how I ended up in the bar area.
So for that scene for me, the woman called up someone that we know, and here's the thing. It's kind of like, I'm a big fan of say what you mean and mean what you say. So when you say, like, everybody remove a piece of clothing, and then when people do that, it's not good enough.
Yeah, that annoyed me.
Like, so the person that was called up to the front, it was a female, and she removed like her shirt or something, and the woman was like, "No, let us see your breasts." So like she had to remove her other shirt, and she was down to her bra, and like she looked so uncomfortable. Like, she's someone that does like immersive theater and I think some haunts, but not, I don't think to the level where like this is the norm.
And this is what, 10 minutes into the show.
Yeah. And I felt bad, because just like the look on her face like killed me, because it was so like, I don't want to do this.
I thought we were going to cover this later in the conversation, because I had similar feelings at various times during the show. I thought, and look, I've said it before on this podcast, anyone who knows me, and there are reasons I have this feeling, like, if I am buying a ticket to your event, do not try to humiliate me in any way.
Right.
And I have had an issue with shows that have elements of humiliation. If it's justified by a storyline, because, hey, look, I've done blackout shows where there was an element of that in the storyline, and I had no problem with it.
Yeah, I had to spank you.
Well, actually, I had a problem with that particular blackout show, because that particular blackout show was absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
So that's what I felt, was at times I felt like they were trying to humiliate the people who bought, $130 ticket to support them. And I thought it was disrespectful, unkind at the very least. And I know that people were uncomfortable by it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and there, there's going to be, of course, it's supposed to make you feel something. It's supposed to make you, feel uncomfortable. But I think a lot of people, they don't want to feel that. They want to feel like emotion that isn't like, I want to crawl into a hole and die.
Yeah, but judging from what you just said, it sounds like that moment for that woman took you out of the show completely.
No, that happened a little a little later. Like
Oh,
it
okay.
didn't take me out of the show. It made me feel for that person.
Okay.
And maybe that's the whole point of the show. We're not supposed to feel for the quote unquote characters. We're supposed to feel for each other. And if that's the case, it worked because I felt horrible for her.
Hmm. We'll talk later. I mean, later in this conversation, I think we're going to touch on that subject again. Um, so after that, you ended up going to the bar, or
Yeah, and that's where I started talking to the singer, which I said a little earlier.
okay. I on my way over to the bar, I made eye contact. There was a guy sitting at a table, like suit coat. I think he had a scarf, longish hair, and I swear, Mike, I don't know why, but I looked at him. We made eye contact, and he looked. You know that feeling of like, don't I know you from somewhere?
Hmm.
I had that feeling about him, and as I got closer, we looked at each other for a couple of seconds, and I just realized like, no, I don't think I know him. I'm not placing him. So I kind of broke eye contact and went to the bar to get a drink, and moments later, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and it was this guy, and he introduced himself as Harry, and he kind of took charge of me, and he said, "What are you drinking?" He literally like split the crowd and went to the bar, got my drink, pulled the like handed me the drink, and pulled me over to a table, and he immediately was like, "So, what brings you here? So, what's your fetish? What are you into? What turns you on?" And so I kind of like I answered honestly, but I also kind of I think it came across as innuendo.
Hmm.
So I think he took it as innuendo, and he launched into this story about how, oh man, well earlier this evening I saw a scene that was so extreme, and he started the story of he had witnessed a kink scene featuring a Japanese woman kicking, no, pardon me, a Thai woman kicking a Japanese guy in the balls repeatedly over and over, and he was screaming in pain, and there was this what he thought was a Swiss couple watching from the wings and seeming to get off on it and enjoy it. So he was describing this whole like ball busting scene that he had witnessed earlier, and I told him, I said, like, that's too extreme for me. I don't get into that kind of pain. And so we were talking about that, and it sort of segued into this conversation about the international mix of people represented there at that event. And he really stressed, and he wanted me to understand that it was such a mix of different cultures that were represented there tonight. And then he led me into a conversation that he was a musician. His last album had done really well. He started talking about his album, and the story that he told me, that I posted this on the Lust Experience forums recently because I hadn't heard anyone else say that this information had been given to them by Harry. Before his last album, he said that he was not present. He was high when it was recorded. He thought it was a horrible album, but it was successful. Before it came out, he, I guess, out of concern, had a conversation with some very powerful people, and he said, how much do you think this is going to make? Do you think it's going to be a hit? And he really stressed to me that their response was a very specific monetary figure. And he said, wouldn't you know it, the album came out, and when they finally wrote me a check, it was that exact dollar amount that he had been quoted. So he was stressing me, like, do you see the power? Do you see the worldwide power that they could predict almost to the cent how successful or unsuccessful a creative endeavor would be in multiple markets globally? So he was really trying to stress the whole international influence.
That kind of reminds me of the stock thing.
Yeah, and I mentioned that on my forum post, was like the idea that they could control a market, a stock market in any country. So he stressed that. We talked a little bit about fetish stuff, not very much. During this time, somebody came up and started giving me a back massage, and it was one of the three guys in the masks. I don't know who it was, though.
Mm-hmm.
And then Harry kind of, like, we tried to write a song. He was like, "Give me a drum beat." And I was drumming on the table, and he was singing, and he made this comment about, this mix of flesh and fluid. I'm here because I want the creative juices. I'm about to go into the studio again, and he was looking for creativity in all of this sensual stuff around him. Which, by the way, while this was going on, there was a woman in white, draped in white cloth, kind of sensually dancing in the bar. I don't know if that happened at your show.
Yeah.
And she was like behind him in my eye line, so I kept noticing her. And so he said, "I think that's the name of my new album, is Flesh and Fluid, because look around you, look at you see around you." And I said, "No, it's like the name of your next album has to be International Mix of Flesh and Fluid, because that's what you're talking about. That's what you're responding to." He's like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, and it could be epic. It could be a concept piece." And we start talking about that. He starts to compose a song, and the disappointing thing was that the only thing he could think of to rhyme with fluid is druid. And he said, like, "No, that's not going to go anywhere." And so when he asked me what I did
Oh my
for a
God,
living,
you could do Cupid.
so
That would be perfect.
okay, druid and Cupid,
No, Fluid and Cupid.
fluid and Cupid.
That rhymes.
Okay, I didn't think of that. So
That's what I'm here for.
okay, so Harry was the one that came up with druid, and he was like, no. So he asked me what I did, and when I said that I work with children's programming, he got a kick out of that. He was like, "Okay, wait, you create kids stuff, and you're here in this place?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And he's like, "Oh, you're a creative type, so we can talk." And we talked more about music, and we talked about songs, and then we talked about his new album cover. I pitched him an idea for his album cover, and he liked it, and it kind of broke. He broke away, and a woman replaced him and introduced herself to me as Tatiana. And when she approached me, she seemed a bit frustrated, and she was frustrated with her job, telling me that she'd been hired for a job for a few weeks, and it had gone on, it turned into something for months, and now she'd been with this group for a couple of years, but she didn't seem happy. And so suddenly she turns to me and she says, "Tell me how you lost your virginity." And I was like, okay.
I haven't yet.
Oh.
I wonder if anyone did.
Oh, that would be interesting.
That would be a curveball.
Yeah, that would have been a good move, definitely. And actually I don't want to go into this. I did tell her the story of how I lost my virginity.
Well, save that for another podcast.
Yeah. And
or never.
It was let's just say there is some very humorous elements to that story.
That's shocking.
So and just as I was like getting near the end of the story, somewhere during that story, a woman started to scream and run across the room, and I said, "Wait, should we, is there anything we should be doing? Should we help?" And she's like, No, don't worry about it. It happens all the time." So come to find out, I believe our friend Justin had been led into a closet by that woman. And again, I'm this is hearsay for me. I was just told this later that she ran screaming from the closet as if to fake the security people out, and the security people questioned Justin as to what he had done wrong. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because several people had similar experiences, apparently. But I asked if we needed to help this woman who was screaming, and she said, no, it happens all the time. And right about that time, Sabrina rang her bell, and we all gathered at a doorway leading deeper into the building, and she asked...
well, hold on, let me...
Oh, okay.
I didn't... If you
right.
want to hog the whole story,
No,
that's fine. No. So one of the things I spoke about earlier about how I was having a conversation with the singer,
right?
But what I didn't mention was the story she told me. And the reason I said, I joked saying, "Oh, she's Addison Jr." is because she came to LA from, I believe, Oklahoma to try and start a career.
Wow.
She met up with these people who made her do quote unquote things and videotaped it. And basically blackmailed her and sent the videos to her father, who then committed suicide based on watching those videos.
Oh, it's horrible.
So you can understand why there was some emotional investment in her. So yeah, and then her singing to me, it was like heart eyes emoji. It was just like, oh my God, like this poor girl. And but then in the bar, I had a similar thing happened to me where the woman came up to me, and she's like, "Who do you most want to see naked here?" And it was like, "Oh, this person, I guess." And then she asked me to explain how I lost my virginity. And while I was doing that, someone came up behind me and gave me a back rub as well. And then that leads to the doorway when the host, she was the Spanish woman, she rang her bell, so we went up there. So I'll take it from here, if so, like, because I know you wanted to just start that part of it for
go
your
ahead.
night. But so this is where things started going off track for me. We gathered there, and there was a man, like a big man, a tough guy. Like, I don't mean that as in like, oh, you're a tough guy, but he like looked tough. He was big, muscular, and he asked who had the strongest will. And I raised my hand because I'm straight edge. I don't drink, do drugs, all of that. And so I was like, okay, I like, in my mind, my will is pretty strong because I can commit to something. And he asked me to take my phone out if I had one and go to the call log. And so I did that, went to the call log, gave it to him, and he's like, call this person. And at this point, it was after midnight. And the person he chose, because you were on there, I would have had no problems calling you. But you probably were the only person, because it was, it's a week before Christmas, so there was definitely some family in there, some friends, but
Yeah, and when I did this, just to jump in, it was 12:30 because I actually checked the time.
So I have a job where that does not have landlines. It's a very like new school type of company. We only use cell phones. For my job, I need to talk to a lot of vendors on my cell phone because we don't have office phones. So I would say 80% of the calls in that call log were vendors, professional career type of people that I need to keep professional like ties with.
Right.
And he chose one, and it was a vendor, and he's like, call this person. And I was like, no, like, I'm not calling that person. That's one of my vendors. Like, I'm not calling them. Like, it's after midnight. They're going to have no idea. They didn't sign up for this. They don't know what I'm involved with in my personal life. Like, no, I'm not doing it. So he started to like, was like, no, you need to call him. And I'm like, no. So he chose another person. It was another vendor. And I was like, and he's like, call this person. I'm like, no, like, I'm not doing it. Like, and then he started like, talking crap to me. And I was like, look, you asked who had the strongest will. Like, this is my will saying no to you. How is that not having the strongest will? And he gave me my phone back. And then everybody around, like the people that worked there were like, oh, what a pussy. You're a little bitch, blah, blah, blah. And at that point, the junior high insults are what took me out of the show. I was like, you know what? This is a show. This is not real anymore. Like, this is like, you're pathetic if you're calling me a bitch and that you're going to make me my bitch because I didn't call someone. Like, I'm done. And at that point, the rest of the show was just like, I had no emotions in it. I was bored. Like, it was just, and there's more. There's like another thing that happened right after this. It was like the 1-2 punch of like not caring.
Actually, it's interesting you say that because that sequence is where my show began to derail. They called us over to the door, and Sabrina came out and asked who had their phones on them, which again, the phone track doesn't make any sense. Like, whether or not we were supposed to even have phones. And my phone, I when I'm asked to turn my phone off at an event, I actually turn my phone off. I don't put it in airplane mode. I don't put it in silent. I actually turn the entire phone off. So I had my phone on me, and I took it out, and the screen was blank, and a couple of other people took their phones out, and they started the same thing. They chose someone near me, and she said turn it on, and so I turned on my phone, and they picked someone near me, and they started doing the same thing of like, call this person. And they called someone and got a voicemail, and their instruction was, you're going to tell them some deep, dark secret about yourself. And that's why I actually checked the time as my phone was powering up, and that's why I know it was about 12:30 when this happened. And as soon as I realized that they were going to call somebody, I just put my phone back in my pocket. Because I'm in the same position, Mike. First of all, I bought the damn ticket. I am there for your event. Do not hassle people who are part of my life and did not sign on for this,
Right.
especially at 12:30 a.m. in the morning. It's like as soon as somebody was made to do it next to me, I got pissed off for them because I thought it was uncalled for and I thought it was disrespectful. And then they made someone else do something along those lines. And I have also heard that in another show, other people did say no to this. So, and again, what you said, it took me out of the show. It was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm the one who bought the ticket. Why are you trying to involve other people in our life? Like, wait a minute. Like, this doesn't make sense. Because now you've turned it into, wait, I bought a ticket for a show. If this isn't the show, then you're just being assholes.
Yeah. And the funny thing is too, and like, you know, the guy was like, I'm gonna find a dress and make you my bitch. And I'm like,
What?
yeah. And like, I looked at him, like I had a mask on and I just rolled my eyes. And like, I hope he saw that through my mask. Like, and I'm not saying that to be like, to be tough or anything, but like, I hope he saw that in order to know how ridiculous it was.
Yeah, I agree with you. That sequence took me out. And here's the here's the thing which I said earlier about the pill was like I made a choice to sort of trust the lust experience event at that point when I swallowed the pill. They broke the trust with the phone. That was a violation of the paying patron's trust. And something which they have said sort of out of game in the past, actually, it has come up on this podcast of why doesn't the community trust this experience? Well, it's moments like that. Why would I trust them? And I want to trust them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that scene I felt was completely disrespectful. That's the word.
Well, and you know, if we go back to the story point, like what did that have to do with the story?
I have absolutely no freaking clue what it had to do with the story. Because remember, we were sort of undercover.
Yeah, at a sex party.
So
yeah, they want us to call people.
Yeah, it just it doesn't make any sense. So after that,
we went into a kind of like kitchen / dining room area.
and did you sit around the dining room table?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, did that.
So at this point, Sabrina, our host, came and we had to look at the person next to us in the eye and connect with them and tell them an intimate secret about ourselves. And that was followed by her shifting several people around. And we were asked to tell another person what clothing item we would like to see them remove.
Or they could choose their own.
Oh, no, we were not given that option.
We were, and of the not funny, but funny thing is the person that was my person was the person I spoke about at the beginning who had to get up.
Oh man. So, well, that's interesting because no, we weren't given that choice, and as a matter of fact, there was some ridicule going on. Like, oh, come on, not the shoes. That's boring. And again, it's like that weird edge of, are you trying to humiliate us? It was so negative and such a turnoff.
Yeah.
And it ran throughout the entire night. The other thing that happened in that area was, you know what? Actually, you participated in something, I think. Why don't you continue telling this story?
Where I was asked to stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because that happened to someone else.
So I was asked to stand up, and they had. I'm not going to call them handlers, but whatever they were handler-ish. There were these women in white dresses, and the blonde in the mask, I believe. Yeah, was there a blonde also in addition to Sabrina?
Yes, there was, and I believe they called her Sky.
Okay. No. Like this person, Sky was the girl. There was another woman, very like aggressive and like taking charge.
No, there was not that. Yeah.
I think she was in Ascension.
Okay.
But might have been painted up.
Okay.
So she was there, and so she had Sky come over, who was one of the handler type girls and made her undress in front of me. And one of the things that I take pride in is I am very respectful most of the time when it comes to awkward situations for other people. So when this girl was undressing, I stared her in the eye. Like, I didn't break eye contact. I didn't look down, didn't catch a glimpse, like nothing. Stared at her in the eye. And after she undressed, I was asked to go into this like kind of like side room, and it was like a dressing room, but there was it was like kind of like a green room, I guess. There was one of those like makeup mirrors with the light bulbs in it.
Oh, okay.
There was a fridge, a couch or chair, I think.
Sounds like a green room, yeah.
Yeah, I went in there. Sky was in there, the blonde I mentioned, and then Mason came in. And the blonde woman was like, "Oh, I thought this was going to be a private conversation, but come on in." So I'm guessing Mason wasn't supposed to be there. And then she started belittling me, saying like, "How dare I look at her chest and blah blah blah." And I was like, "What do you? No, I didn't." Like, and so it was a bunch of like, "I saw you look," and I was like, "No, you didn't." And then Sky got in. She's like, "I saw you look at my tits," like, and I'm like, "Oh my god, no, I didn't." Like, I didn't. So that was kind of like the 1-2 punch. Like, after the phone thing, I was like, in my mind, because I was taken out of the show, is like, where's your improv? Like, where, like in Ascension, when I met Sam in one of the rooms the second time, and I asked if you remembered killing me, like right off the bat, she's like, "I know I didn't kill you." You know, she went into that whole spiel, which I had talked about, which was one of the highlights for me. But like, it didn't change. It was like, it was a script to me. It was like, okay, you have to say this. Like, even though I didn't.
So what you're saying is that they didn't adjust to the fact that you did not look at this woman in front of you,
yeah.
and they didn't deal with the reality.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep. And then there was something, I misheard something. I don't know exactly what was said, but I thought something was said about having to kiss someone or else they would throw me out, or they would safety me out quicker than ever. Or there was something about that. So what I heard was something that if I didn't kiss her, I would have to get thrown out, which was not what they said apparently, because they made fun of me for it, but whatever. And I said, like, look, if having to kiss her means you have to kick me out, like, then kick me out, because I'm not kissing her. And so then they just started laughing, and it was like, "What are you talking about? She's mine. I don't share." And then like Mason was like, "Mikey, I don't know why would you think you could kiss her?" And I was like, "I thought that's what I heard. I misheard her. I'm sorry, you know?" So like, that part didn't bug me, but it was just like, everything that happened in that room was just kind of, for me, a train wreck for my show.
So when you left that room, where did you go?
I believe something had started happening in the dining room, and I believe everyone was lined up.
Okay.
And I got into line.
All right. So what happened with, I don't remember if the guy was led away that way in our group, but I think he was.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is the strawberries were brought out for the dining room table.
I had that before I went in.
Oh, okay. And
I think
we were told to feed the strawberry to the person that we had told to remove a piece of clothing.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that, I don't know. There is something very, there is a sensual aspect to feeding someone. So I think that's what they were going for, but it was really cut short. So it didn't. I felt it didn't. I felt it like, I don't know why I was asked to do that. It was like, oh, feed a strawberry. Oh, let's go over here. And then they started moving us around to the area with the chairs. And I think there was going to be some questions asked or something in that time period. But almost immediately, a man came in sort of chasing a Japanese woman.
Okay, I saw that.
Okay, and in my show, Sabrina tried to calm him down because the guy was really being a jerk to the woman. And he obviously was a person of importance because Sabrina was trying to chill the situation a bit, but not make a big deal about it. She called him counselor. So I'm not exactly sure what kind of a title that would be in that situation. The guy demanded that a woman in our group and myself follow him and he led us with the Japanese woman down a hallway and into a bathroom. This led into a sequence which, once inside, we were told to like stand over to the side. It was a huge bathroom, by the way, massive, and he began to just verbally abuse and humiliate the Japanese woman in front of us. I wanted her to sing a song, had her tell us a joke, and again, the other patron and I, the woman that was in that room with me, we were obviously uncomfortable. And I kept looking at the other patron, and she refused to make eye contact with me. But I could tell that we were both uncomfortable. And because we had been in this situation where, like, you follow the rules, you do what you're told, you don't touch, it just kept getting more and more uncomfortable. And this scene for me went on way, way too long. Because that scene was the scene that lingered the most. And I think because here's the thing, Mike, like, was I supposed to, I could speak up, and eventually it became so uncomfortable that the other patron and I almost simultaneously said, "Stop it, this is not cool. Like, just stop what you're doing." And what I tried to do was I tried to engage the guy. So what I tried to distract him, and he said, like, "Oh, well, sing us a song." I was like, sing us a song. And she's kind of like was crying. And so I turned to him and was like, "Oh, wait. You know what might be interesting? Ask her what her favorite song is. Tell her to sing her favorite song." And maybe, and I was just trying to interact with the guy to distract him from the woman. And the female patron next to me was like, "This is not cool. This needs to stop." And it was just so unpleasant. And I don't know what I was supposed to get from it. Am I supposed to be looking at how it made me feel? Like, because the rest of the show didn't, have that. I don't know. I just literally was so confused by that sequence as to why I witnessed it. And at the end, the African-American woman, which we spoke about earlier, the beautiful one with the gold choker, comes bursting in. Rizzo was there as well. She came in, wanted to know what had happened, and apparently the counselor gentleman had done this repeatedly to other women. And this was like his method of operation. This is how he humiliates women and degrades them. And because she said, "Really? Like, this same old shtick?" And she made a reference about the joke and said, "You want to see a joke?" And she pulled down his pants and exposed his genitalia, and which I think had to have been a prosthetic. Pushed him up against the wall and started to humiliate him, which at this point I was so disgusted by that whole sequence. It was like, I literally went to, I paid how much money to witness this?
So I was kind of involved in part of that.
How so?
After from the lineup, and I again, like the it's a little foggy the order of events. But Sky came back up to me and said, that once that happened, she's like, "We need to tell the woman, I forget the bald woman that you just described."
Right.
It's like, "We need to tell her about him, but I'm not allowed to speak to her, so you need to go with me to tell her that he's doing this."
Okay, that explains how Rizzo, who we both know, ended up in that. Okay, that makes sense, and I believe that came up on the forums because I didn't know how they ended up bursting into that room.
Yeah, so I went out to the bar area where she was, told her, like, "Hey, he's like, I guess he's doing what he usually does," and she's like, "Oh, again," like. And then followed her back. We got into like that hallway, and it's like, face the wall, we're not allowed to look," or something. So I was facing the wall, and Sky then told me that she, and not Sky, but the bald woman, the shaved head woman, and counselor, controller, whichever, used to date. So there was like some issue. But here's the funny thing, and I don't know if she heard me, but Sky is the woman I just mentioned, undressed, and then said I was staring at her, blah, blah, blah. I called her a fucking liar, like when we were standing against the wall. And I don't know if she heard me, but but that should show you the kind of mindset I was in. I was like, I'm so over this. And I was like, I didn't look at your chest. You're a fucking liar. And then all of a sudden I feel a hand on my shoulder, and it's Mason, and he pulls me back to the line. I think we went back to the line, and he said something like, consider this perks of the job. So like, yeah, so who's like, that's the thing. I was like,
what's the perk?
What's the job? Whose job? Does that mean he liked my resume and I'm hired? His job, that he has power and can just change things? Like, where was I supposed to go after the wall that he took me out of? Like there's like things like that. So then we were standing there, and he had his kind of like little like gimp slave boy, and he was on the floor with Mason's Rubik's cube, and Mason told me like, you own him now. And it's like,
what?
Okay. Yeah. So, and then Mason and I had like a staring contest. He won the first round, and then the second round was, I guess, I don't know if it was a tie, but I didn't lose. I know that because he kept saying like, oh, you're getting better. And then the gimpy slave boy took me to the bathroom and told me I needed to undress and, do some other stuff, and that if I didn't, I'd get in trouble, but he'd get in more trouble. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm wondering, like, okay,
so you're being blackmailed? What?
No, like, I'm like, if I own you, why are you telling me what to do? Like, shouldn't I be telling you what to do? Like, so whatever. So I'm in the bathroom, and I'm apparently being prepared for anointment. I was chosen. And at that point, Mason comes in and Sabrina comes in. So they're watching me, do my thing. Sabrina gives me an art project, which is one of the funnier things that happened.
What?
And yeah, I'm not going into it. But if she's listening, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so there was a little bit of a scene with Sabrina, and she said something else to me that, again, I'm not going into. I promised her I wouldn't. But it like that part, it was great. Like, that was one of the highlights of the show for me. But again, was it a highlight because of what happened, or was it a highlight because it's an emotionally invested character? So
there's
like,
a history there.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what made that? So that was good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know the anointment process. Like, I'm sure you've read it, but at that point, like, other participants came in and gave me compliments, and like, they rubbed my hands with this oil, and it felt very similar to the school scene at the second part of Ascension, where like the handlers would tell you something about yourself, like, and of course the easy one for me is, I like your tattoos, and stuff like that.
Which, yeah, I don't know this because I didn't get that during the second Ascension, and I didn't get any of that here. So it's like,
okay.
So yeah, I don't know.
And so after that room, I was brought into Anna's room, and that's where she tells us about how her gift is she can read people, and she read the person I was with, who was also chosen for anointment.
And this was a female, right?
This was a female. And then she read her, and she actually started crying because it was so dead on.
Wow.
And then she read me, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty accurate. But like, the thing is, like, this was the only part in my mind that had any connection to the data gathering, because it's like, no one is that good. So you obviously have files on us. You know, because you've been given like the last 2 years of history on us about what we say, what we think, how we feel. You're not reading us. You're just another pawn in the OSDM's game. That's how I took it.
Okay.
So, and maybe because I thought that, like, I had some sort of wall up and it didn't affect me the way it should have, but that's the way I saw it. And then after that scene, we were led to the anointment part, and we were placed on a bed, and there was a bunch of people there, and I saw Stephanie, and I just mad dogged her the whole time. Not in a like I hate you way, but just I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but she was the only person I recognized, so I locked in on her. And then we met Cecilia finally, which,
I think we're getting ahead because
I just want to finish. Like,
okay,
that's what she said. So So here's the thing, though. Like, Cecilia was a character we didn't even know existed until 2 days prior because of the podcast
Right.
interview. We didn't even know Noah had a mother. And then all of a sudden she's in this grand finale of this show, which is like, okay, we just found out your name yesterday, you know? Like, and so that's kind of where it kind of like, yeah, it just like fell apart again for me. But I won't go into the saves the day moment. I'll leave that for you since I'm going too far ahead.
No, that's quite all right because I mean, you left me back in the bathroom. So
Sounds about right.
So when you were instructed that you had to tell who was serving as the host to break in and interrupt the humiliation and degradation sequence in the bathroom,
See, I didn't go into the bathroom.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I was staying against the wall, and then that's when Mason took me back.
Oh, I think that's how they got you onto that other track.
Right.
So Sabrina burst in, wanted to know what was going on, and she said, "Where's Russell?" Because Sabrina was standing in the doorway, and it's kind of hard to describe the layout of the bathroom. The bathroom had sort of a indentation, and I was literally standing out of sightline of the door. It was large enough. And so I stepped forward, and Sabrina led me out of the bathroom, down the hallway, and all the way back out to the bar area.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got into the bar area, she changed character a bit. And she sort of became the Sabrina that I had interacted with through most of last year.
Okay.
And I've talked to, once or twice on a phone call this year. So she led me to the center of the floor, like between the singer area and the bar area. And she said, "Would you like to dance with me?"
Aw.
Which took me completely by surprise. And at this point, I had... At this point, taken off, like, I wore, like, a jacket and a vest. I took the jacket off in the beginning, I'd taken the vest off in the dining room, and the tie. And I was still literally carrying that with me. So when we went to dance, it became this weird, like, I was still trying to, like she, went into position, and I stepped forward, and I had the vest in my hand. Like, it was just so awkward. So weird.
I'd expect nothing less.
And so I just took this moment. I went, fuck it. And I just threw my clothes, the vest and the tie and what I had in my hands, off toward the lounge area when we first came in. And I began dancing with her. And, she asked me how I was enjoying the night. And I told her, I said, I just saw something really, really disturbing. I've seen some really upsetting things. I don't know how I feel about this night. And it was just a moment of, like, awkwardness, just because I still have this weird feeling of, like, I don't want to disappoint her. So she looks at me, and at this point, I'd thrown the vest away, and she sort of looks me up and down and says, "You've removed a couple of pieces of clothing. Do you think I should remove something?"
Oh, damn.
And
I can hear, like, a cartoon, like, sound of, like, a growing thing. Like, when people get bopped on the head and they get a bump, it's like... I'm picturing that sound happening right now.
Well, and keep in mind, she was wearing, the jacket and the bra underneath and the skirt. And you were talking about how you have respect in awkward situations with women.
Yeah.
I said the most awkward, I'm sure it came out really weird, but I said, like, I believe that it's something along the lines of said that that would always be a woman's choice to disrobe in front of a man. It shouldn't be the man's choice. So I put it back on her. And she reached down and she unbuttoned her jacket and she slipped the jacket off and she threw the jacket aside like I had thrown the vest aside. And she put her hands back up and we began to dance. This is this weird thing, like, Mike, I don't know what I was feeling in this moment.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I know.
But I was emotional. It's like, and really for the first time during the entire event, I was actually present and emotional. Except I wasn't present either because I became really jumbled in my head. And here's the thing, you know, like the hashtag missed opportunities has come up several times during the course of this year.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, I didn't want to talk about OSDM. I didn't want to talk about data mining. I didn't want to talk about the room that we were standing in and what it meant for her. And I think the opportunity was there for me to ask questions.
Dude, just enjoy the moment.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
So I looked down at her and she's, you know, she's standing in this pool of light, or we are, because we're dancing. And, you know, later, actually, the Lust Experience Instagrammed this moment. They took a picture of it from afar and they Instagrammed this moment. And I just looked down and I very sincerely, I looked down at her and I said, "You are so beautiful." And she leaned in and she put her head on my shoulder.
Oh, killing me, Smalls.
And she said, "You're beautiful."
Aww.
To me. And that was that moment, man.
I mean, I'm surprised Lust didn't have like Kenny Rogers playing.
I just had no urge to talk about anything specific. I had no urge to
Oh, I know the urges you had.
Thank you very much. And we just had that moment. Like, that was it. We had that moment and it was wonderful. And then she kind of pulled away from me and she picked up her jacket and she said, would you help me with this, please? And I helped her slip back into her jacket and she had me button it for her, and she turned and she led me back into the show, and we didn't speak at that point. It was just like she just led me back to the group. And here's the weird thing, Mike, about that sequence. It felt like goodbye.
Oh, weird.
I don't know if that's what it was. I don't know if I'm interpreting it weirdly, but you know that moment in a relationship or a friendship where you just kind of go, this is over.
Yeah, the one you never get the hint of with me. Just kidding.
No, you're not. So, yeah, it was this really weird. And when I went back into that room, the African-American woman was asking questions of the group or something, and she was making judgment calls about people. I literally was so flummoxed at that point. I don't know exactly what I walked back into, but she looked over at me and she looked at me and she said, "And you are way too fully clothed." And she gave me a very stern look. And so I took my shirt off at that point. We were led into a small room, which it sounds like you probably never saw. It's a room with a character named Rico, or a gentleman named Rico.
No, but I've heard the name.
Again, just a really unpleasant room. So we walked in, we were sat down. Rico was this very energetic, frantic, like, somebody else said that he had been doing coke. I don't think I witnessed that. If he did it as part of the conversation, I never witnessed that because he insisted that we were going to play a drinking game, And so he was talking about how expensive the liquor was that they provided at this party. And like he kept like, oh, this bottle is so expensive. You won't believe how much this costs. And we're going to play a drinking game with it. And so he was started to distribute glasses and everything. And then I was called out of the room by the African American woman. And I was stepped into the hallway, and the Japanese woman who was the counselor was humiliating in the bathroom, almost attacked me. And she came up and she was clutching at me and grabbing me and speaking, obviously, in a language I don't understand. And the African American woman kept saying things like, what did you do to her? I don't understand what she's saying. Like, what did you do? I don't understand. It's like, what have you done? In a very accusatory toward me, and I am frantically looking around, and I'm trying to like get some distance between me and the Japanese woman, and I am looking around, and I just so happened to glance down the hallway, and the counselor was in the corner of the end of the hallway, almost cowering. It was a very weird, and I looked at him, and I turned back to the African American woman, and I said, all I did was I tried to defend her against him. I was trying to distract him. I said something along those lines, and this absolutely infuriated her. She became livid with me.
Oh, wow.
And she looked at me, and she just said, don't you ever. And the Japanese woman is still, going on and all this. I think she said, engage them. And I said, I'm sorry. And she said, get back in there. And she threw me back in the room with Rico. But here's the thing. I have absolutely no idea what that scene was about. I have no idea what was I supposed to give a different answer?
I don't know.
That scene makes no sense to me. Other than to put me in my place? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I was supposed to get out of it. But that scene ended, and I felt like I had done something wrong. And I don't mean I had done something wrong. I felt like I had given the wrong answer, and that's why I got thrown in again with Rico, is because I hadn't. It felt like in an escape room when you fail to unlock something, which
right.
Again was a moment that kind of took me out of the show.
I don't know that moment.
Thank you very much. You've never seen me get confused in an escape room. But it just, again, it was a moment that kind of took me out of the show because it was so ridiculously confusing to me. And then I got thrown back in the room with Rico, and at this point, Rico, the drinking game, I guess, had progressed a little bit, and Rico was talking about how any request that we wanted to make, they would somehow provide. And the boy that I guess was in service to you at some point, I think he was also in service to Rico.
Okay.
Because he had a character like that. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on that person's name. But he brought in a piece of meat, and he said, they brought this for you. And Rico kind of freaked out a little bit in a happy way. And was like, I can't believe it. This is what I'm talking about. It was like, what would you like? And somebody said, I'd like a 18-year-old blonde. And Rico was like, oh, you want younger than that, don't you? That kind of thing. Very lascivious, very, very, just very primal in everything that he expressed. So this plate of meat, and at this point, I had been led back in by the African American woman, and there was no place to sit, so I sat on the floor next to a chair. And he said, do you know what this is? And we were all like, no. And he's like, this is elephant dick. I told them I wanted elephant dick, and they got me elephant dick. And so he cuts off a piece of the meat, and he says, do you want to try some? Do you want to try some? And okay, whatever. And because I was on the floor, he held the meat above me, and sort of almost as if I'm a dog.
Right.
And he said, here, you taste this. And then he pulled it away from me, as I was trying to take a bite of it. And they were laughing, and he was kind of mocking me for that. And then eventually I took a bite of it.
How'd it taste?
It tastes like summer sausage.
Oh.
So Hickory Farms summer sausage is what it tasted like exactly.
All right.
So
You heard it here first.
yes, I should have just said tastes like chicken, but so at this point, someone informed Rico that the television had been fixed. Now, during this entire sequence, we'd walked into this room and there was a TV screen on the wall. And it had a still, and I immediately was like, okay, I don't recognize the version, but I recognize the character, I thought. And the character was Quasimodo. And I was like, why would he be watching, The Hunchback of Notre Dame? Or, like, it just seemed like a really odd, and it was a freeze frame, the entire sequence. So when he was informed that the TV was still working, he hit play, and actually the camera zooms out, and what it is this really bizarre porn movie where Quasimodo is like surrounded by a couple of naked women and they have sex. And Rico decides that we need to all get naked and masturbate together. So he strips off his clothes and is fondling himself and goes running out of the room. And then what happens is Sabrina walks into the room and says, "Where's Rico?" And the people kind of explain, like, well, he kind of left and we're just here watching porn awkwardly. And she flips the TV over to a series of security cameras and says, "What is this? Why are we so late? Why are we running so far behind? This is ridiculous." And she gathers all of us and leads us to that final area that you were talking about where the anointment ceremony was going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's where she leads us to.
Okay.
All right. So we walk in. The guy who we knew last year's Tom Barrow is like checking all of us out. That whole sequence plays out where he's like, Stephanie looks at all of us to see if he wants to know if she recognizes any of us. It was all kind of confusing at that point.
Yeah, I didn't even know he was there.
So, really?
Yeah.
Was he not at your show?
I don't know. If he was, I didn't see him.
Oh, wow.
If he was only in that end scene, then I wouldn't have seen him because I can only see, like, because the lights were on, like, on you, so I can only see, like, the people immediately in front of me.
Ah, okay. All right. So Stephanie, who was one of the handlers from, Ascension last year, pulls me aside and she said, "Russell, meet me at the doorway." Now, there was some cloth hanging along the wall, so what I did is I was like, okay, and I slipped behind the cloth and just waited, and eventually Stephanie made her way to the door, opened the door, I slid out, Stephanie slips out behind me, and she says, "I don't know what the hell is going on." She said, "Sabrina is walking around here like she owns the goddamn place. I don't understand what her attitude is about. I don't understand anything that's going on, and I don't understand, like, nothing that I do is appreciated." And she goes off in this tangent about how underappreciated. She says, "Sabrina gets a movie, I get spreadsheets." She's talking about that she doesn't understand, she's unhappy, and I know several people witnessed Stephanie, I get the common term I guess we use is glitch. She sort of restarted on me and started on a different tangent, and then she sort of glitched again and started talking about something else, and then she turns to me and she looks at me like she doesn't know me, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Stephanie."
That's what Sabrina did last year.
Exactly.
So Stephanie got the helmet, probably.
That's exactly what I wanted to point out, is Stephanie's behavior with me in that hallway is exactly how Addison/Sabrina behaved last year, the night that I saw them put the helmet on her. And so here's the mind-blowing part of this for me. Stephanie glitches again, sort of, and she's like, "Russell." I said, "Yes, it's me." It's like, "You know me." And she comes in and she starts to hug me.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "Oh, Russell, you are so beautiful."
There's the Kenny Rogers.
That's exactly what I said to Sabrina at the beginning of our dance. I said that to Sabrina, and now Stephanie said it to me.
They got wireless technology.
I don't. This was really weird when it happened, and so I hugged Stephanie, and when she said that to me, I kind of pushed her because her head was on my shoulder. So I kind of pushed her away, and I said, "You're beautiful." which is the exact exchange, except we changed roles
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
had with Sabrina. So I thought that was bizarre. Now, she said that we needed to go back into the room, and I went back into the room, and everyone was sort of mingling, and I wound up on a sofa with a woman who, like motioned for me to sit next to her, and she said, look, I'm working here, not a great job. I was one of the handlers in Ascension. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't recognize you, but I really didn't interact with the handlers in Ascension very much at all. And she was like, well, how much of a perv are you? You're here. And I said, I have a little perv in me. And she was like, oh, it's written all over you. It's like, I can tell. So we had that. And then she eventually pulls me off the sofa, and there's a mattress in the corner of the room. When I laid down on the mattress, she told me to just stay there. And then she walked away. And at this point, I was so just confused by everything. And I think I was enjoying it probably more than you say that you did, but I still was just kind of like, what's the point of all this? And so I'm kind of just looking around at other people interacting with other people, and I notice Mason begins to cross the room, and Mason and I made eye contact, and I sort of pointed at him, and he stood near the head of the bed looking down on me for a moment or two. I kind of, I don't know, I kind of gestured at him. I don't know. It's like he looked at me like somebody looking at a lab rat is kind of what I felt from him. But I thought he was he looked curious, but it was a very odd, unspoken exchange. And so I looked up at him and I said something along the ways of, look, sir, there is no way you can know exactly how, exactly why, but you have been an influence on my life for several weeks now, and I just want to say it would be an honor to shake your hand right now. And he looked a little confused, and I did not move my hand. I waited for him, and he looked down at my hand, and he sort of started to extend his hand, and so we shook. And he asked me a question. He got a little closer to me. He kneeled down, and he got closer to me, and he said, "Are you you?" And for some reason, it made perfect sense to me.
So wait, is this in the ceremony room still?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in the opposite corner from the bed with the lights on it.
So was all this happening while this ceremony was starting?
No, this was before the
Oh,
ceremony.
wow.
Because people were mingling. And so he looked down, he knelt down, and he asked me that question, "Are you you?" And I said, "No, not yet. I'm working on me." All right. I answered something along those lines, and I wasn't sure what to say to him, and I was kind of flummoxed, and he said, "You need to know. You should realize that I have ways of understanding much more than you think." And I was like, okay. And I tried to express, I was like, look, the video you made, the breakdown of factions, your behavior, your demeanor, the integrity you seem to have, it's all of that, the genuineness of when you appeared, it's even if I disagree, and I literally was just probably saying gibberish at that point. And I became frustrated, and I said, "I am not expressing this well." And he got angry, and he said, don't do that. You keep working, keep going, and until you become you.
Sounds like there's a new spot for Mason that replaced Sabrina on your crush list.
I have a complete crush on Mason.
He was mine first.
But the way that he influenced you is partially why I feel this way. I don't know. There was something about the way he affected things, including you,
I just wanted to see death and destruction, man. Like that's it.
I saw
And
beyond that.
and he seemed to be the one that was doing it. He was, you know, like he was action and not talk. But
Which we've had a lot of talk this year.
yeah, but unfortunately, he's just like everyone else.
I don't know. But for some reason in that moment, I connected with him. And during the entire show, other than that moment with Sabrina, that's the only other moment that I felt a sincere connection to anybody, was that moment with Mason, where he just said, like, keep going, keep working. Because it's the only time anyone in that entire event, other than maybe Morgan, seemed to be concerned
Right.
about me or connect or want to connect with me. Because he seemed genuine, Sabrina seemed genuine, no one else seemed genuine to me.
Mm-hmm.
So he held out his hand, and he helped me get up off the mattress, and he led me over to the anointment scene, and that's when that sequence began.
Okay.
With Cecilia talking.
Right. Who is Noah Sinclair's mother?
Right.
Who we just found out about like a few days before.
Right. So, and she basically said that, and again, I was so flummoxed by the whole Mason exchange that Cecilia kind of, I know that there was supposed to be this ceremony where the two people on the bed, which at this point we should clarify, I guess you were one of the people on the bed for your show, that they basically needed to make a baby.
Right.
And the moon had aligned, all the signs were aligned, that this was the night this was supposed to happen.
We were going to create Anok.
And then that whole sequence, Mike, for me, played like a really awkward sitcom.
Yeah.
Because we were all, like, two people were on the bed, and, the guy was covered partially by a towel. The woman still had, like, leggings on, and she was covered. Cecilia sat down next to her and said, hey, if you have any questions, like, we're right here for you. Go to it. And Sabrina was sitting in the chair on the opposite side of the bed, and it just went, this seems so comical. Mm-hmm. It seemed ridiculous.
Well, I mean, at this point, I have to question OSDM as a whole, because this is the second time they chose me. Like, they first tried to sacrifice me to get an Oracle. Now they want me to help create Anok, and I failed both times. So I think they need to look at other people, because I'm obviously not OSDM material. I can't create things.
Well, and it just felt very awkward. And then Noah Sinclair breaks in at the end and gives this speech about, and during all this, like, we were instructed to kneel at the foot of the bed, and, we were supposed to pay tribute to the two people on the bed. And it felt like this weird ceremony, but it just felt comical to me. And then Noah burst in and, said something along the, he went on this speech about, this is not the way you create a savior. It's like, this is a joke. Two people screwing, and then he mocked the guy for not being hard. It's just like all of this other stuff. And Noah came in and was the hero of this shenanigan by saying, like, no, you people don't get it. It comes from sacrifice and hard work. And they posted a quote later from him that says, a true savior would come from loving someone so much that you fucking hate them half the time. At that point, he walks through the crowd, the group of us at the foot of the bed, and Sarah is standing there, and they hug and embrace, and apparently they dip, and, like, that's the happy ending, and then we get ushered out of the room, except for one thing. During that last moment between Sarah and Noah in my show, I look up, and I see Mason crossing the room directly at me. And we make eye contact, and he holds out his hand. And I just held out my hand, and he pushes a Rubik's Cube into my hand, and he looks at me, and he nods. And I nod back, and I got it. And it's what he said to me, is like, work in progress, keep working. Again, that was one of the few sincere moments in my whole show.
That's awesome.
And again, that's what I said. It's like right now, the one connection I feel is, of all people, to Mason, and I've barely made a connection with it.
Now you get it.
I do. Except not to the degree that I think you did. But and I am. So we walk back and we leave we get our clothes that had been collected for us and thrown into a box, and we left the building. But how did that final sequence play out for you?
The same, except I had a different angle.
So here's
except I didn't have Sarah, and if Sinclair was there, I didn't see her because of my viewing angle.
Okay. And for me, watching someone that I knew on that bed, almost naked in my show was just like, it made me very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really pulled out because I was wondering what they felt. And I wasn't like, did they feel, because they looked awkward.
Right.
And that again, it was one of those things that really pulled me out of the show. Just like the whole potential nudity, etc., of that sequence really pulled me out of the show.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable.
And again, it just didn't really work for me.
Yeah, it just gets boring.
Yeah, much of this show I thought was very uninteresting. And also with people I really didn't care for.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If I hadn't paid, $130? I don't remember what the ticket was.
Something like that.
If I hadn't paid that, this is a party I would have left.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing after the phone situation. Like, it's like, there's still probably another hour or so I paid for it. May as well see what else is going to happen.
Right. Yeah, which is disappointing because I have been hoping for more from the Lust experience all year, and I was really hoping that this was going to be it. And it didn't do much for me.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder where the story is going to go from this point, because I felt like the Anointment didn't really have anything to do with the previous few months. Like maybe like a couple points, like the trying to conceive a child and ceremonies and stuff that Andrew or Drew stumbled upon.
Right.
But one point in all of this time, it's like, where is this going to go now? Like, I don't know.
And again, it seems odd that, like I had made a connection, a minor connection with Joyce.
Yeah.
And she wasn't around, and yet she had appeared in the video where all the walls came down. So, that struck me as odd.
And with all the data stuff and the iConfidant stuff, is like, spoiler alert, at the last show, apparently Sabrina is pregnant with Anok. Are they going to implant Anok with all of our data? Is it going to go that way? It's just like, where is this going to go?
Yeah.
It was rhetorical. But...
You know me, I always answer rhetorical questions. And also, I'm not exactly sure why we were there.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. Other than that we were supposed to see how horrible the people were. But yeah, it's the whole thing struck me as being weird. And off kilter and not much fun.
Yeah.
And for all of that talk about sex, like around the dining room, not very sexy.
Mm-hmm. So earlier we talked, about Night Shift, and you were saying how, you want to go and give them another chance to see what they would be capable of. Like, at this point, after going through Anointment, if tickets went on sale tomorrow for another event, would you go?
Wow, that's a really hard question.
Lust.
Well, it becomes like, if Mason were there, yes, but I have no guarantee of that,
right?
Because that's the most interesting character for me right now, and because of, the one of the two most interesting moments in this sequence. But look, this is the second event where I walked away extremely disappointed. My second time through Ascension last year was a major disappointment to me.
Mm-hmm.
Except for one sequence. And this was a disappointment to me. So I'm not sure where I stand.
Right.
I'll have to see how the story continues to develop. I'll keep checking on the ARG stuff. But yeah, I want to be more enthused than I am right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would like to be more enthused.
You can't force it, though.
And there are several times this year when I have really tried to force it. So let me ask the same question of you. If another event comes very quickly, would you buy a ticket for it?
I think it really depends. you know, kind of like what you said, like, will it be something similar? Will it be based on story? Like, unfortunately, we will never know those answers before the event happens. So probably not. Like, you know, I would wait for reviews to come out and see.
Right.
Because it's like, I don't, you know, I don't know. I don't know. You can cut all those I don't knows out. There's no point having those.
No, that's how you feel. But also it seems odd to me that people who made multiple trips to Ascension, like, things changed, and it sounds like they dumped a bunch of information on people the second time they went through this event.
Yeah, it's kind of like a pay to play.
Yeah, and I felt like, well, my second time through Ascension did not pay off well for me. And so that's why I didn't buy a second ticket to this, you know, not at that high a price range. So I missed out on part of the show because I'm not willing to pay double the price. There's a lot of weirdness right now that I'm feeling over this whole thing.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll still continue to see what's going to happen and follow the AOG and all that fun stuff. And if you would like to do that as well, you can go to thelustexperience.com, check out the forums and the link to the Slack channel on there. On Facebook, The Lust Experience. On Instagram, The Lust Experience. And on Twitter, Lust_experience. So yeah, so that's everything we've done since the last podcast.
Yeah, it's been an interesting holiday season.
It's crazy. Sure. It's crazy how much gets in the way, like holidays, and you were traveling and blah, blah, blah,
I was out
blah.
of town for almost a full month.
Yeah, what a quiet month.
Did you miss me?
Anyway, so if you'd like to contact us, Mike at myhauntlife.com or Russell at myhauntlife.com with 2 S's and 3 L's. And
what?
You ruined it. No one listens. No one pays attention. Fine. Russell with 2 S's and 2 L's at myhauntlife.com. You can find us on the web at myhauntlife.com and on Facebook and all the social media at myhauntlife, or leave us a text or voicemail on the hotline 515-HAUNT-LA. So be safe. Have a happy new year, because we're recording this before New Year. Not sure if it'll be out before New Year, but if it is, hope you had a good New Year. Happy 2018 and all that fun stuff.
See you in the next year.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
See ya.
Get out. We're done for now.
Remind me that I might want to insert something. Really?
Wow.
How old are you?
Yeah.